The starship Horizon drifted silently through the inky black of deep space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the main view screen. The image showed a swirling nebula, its vibrant colors a stark contrast to the emptiness around them. "Status report," Chen said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's sensor officer, looked up from his console. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're maintaining position at the edge of the Cygnus Nebula as ordered." Chen nodded, her short black hair barely moving with the motion. The Horizon had been stationed here for weeks, part of humanity's push to explore beyond their home system. But today was different. Today, they weren't alone. "Any change in our visitor?" Chen asked, her gaze shifting to a smaller display on the view screen. It showed a massive vessel, easily 10 times the size of the Horizon. Its hull was a strange, iridescent material that seemed to shimmer and shift as they watched. "No change, Captain," Rodriguez replied. "They're maintaining distance and haven't made any aggressive moves. But they're not responding to our hails either." Chen frowned. First contact with an alien civilization was something humanity had dreamed of for centuries. But now that it was happening, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease in her gut. The alien ship had appeared without warning, emerging from the nebula like a ghost. Its technology was clearly far beyond anything humanity possessed. "Keep trying all frequencies," Shen ordered, "and make sure our translation matrix is ready. We don't want any misunderstandings when they finally decide to talk." As if on cue, the main view screen flickered. The image of the nebula was replaced by a face, if you could call it that. The alien had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its skin was a deep purple, almost black. Multiple eyes, each a different color, blinked independently across what Chen assumed was its face. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move. Instead, colors rippled across its skin in complex patterns. "Greetings, beings of the small vessel," a computerized voice translated. "We are the Zorax. We come in peace." Chen took a deep breath, steeling herself. This was it. The moment that would change human history forever. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Starship Horizon," she said, her voice clear and confident. "On behalf of humanity, we welcome you." The alien's eyes blinked in a rapid sequence. "Your response is unexpected," it said. "Most species we encounter react with fear or aggression." Chen allowed herself a small smile. Humanity has long hoped to meet other intelligent life in the universe. We're explorers, seekers of knowledge. We hope we can learn from each other. The alien was silent for a moment, its skin rippling with deep blues and greens. "Fascinating," it finally said. "We, too, are explorers. Perhaps we are not so different after all." Over the next few hours, Chen and the alien, who introduced itself as Thanthor, exchanged information. The Zorax, it turned out, were an ancient species that had explored much of the galaxy. They were curious about humanity, a young race that had achieved faster-than-light travel in a remarkably short time. As they talked, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. The Zorax had technologies that seemed like magic, matter replication, instantaneous communication across vast distances, even the ability to manipulate gravity itself. But they were also curious about human achievements, particularly in the areas of art and music. "Your species creates beauty for its own sake," Xanthor said, its skin shimmering with golden hues. "This is rare and precious." Chen was about to respond when an alarm blared across the bridge. Rodriguez's fingers flew across his console. "Captain, we're detecting multiple ships emerging from the nebula." The view screen split, showing both Thanthor and a tactical display. Chen's heart sank as she saw dozens of ships, each as large as the Zorax vessel, appear from the swirling gases. "Xanthor," Chen said, fighting to keep her voice calm. "What's going on?" The alien's skin darkened to a deep purple. "I apologize, Captain Chen. I had hoped to have more time to explain. These are not our allies. As Chen watched in horror, the new ships opened fire. Beams of energy lanced out, striking the Zorax ship. Its shimmering hull absorbed the attacks, but Chen could see it was taking damage. "We are under attack by the Void Eaters," Xanthor explained, its voice urgent. "They are a scourge that consumes all in their path. We have been fighting them for millennia." Chen's mind raced. The horizon was no match for even one of these ships, let alone a fleet. But she couldn't just sit by and watch. "How can we help?" she asked. Xanthor's eyes widened, all of them focusing on Chen for the first time. "You would aid us? Against such overwhelming odds?" Chen nodded firmly. "Earth has a saying, 'The enemy of my enemy is my friend.' If these Void Eaters are a threat to you, they're a threat to us too. We stand together." For a moment, Xanthor was silent. Then its skin erupted in a riot of colors. "Your courage honors us, Captain Chen. Perhaps together, we can turn the tide." Over the next hour, the horizon darted between the massive ships, its agility allowing it to avoid the worst of the fire. Chen used every trick she knew, every maneuver she'd ever learned, to keep her ship intact while providing whatever support she could to the Zorax. The Horizon's weapons were practically useless against the Void Eater ships, but Chen found other ways to help. They used the ship's tractor beams to deflect debris, protecting damaged sections of the Zorax vessel. When a group of smaller enemy craft tried to flank the Allies, the Horizon led them on a wild chase through the nebula, using the gases to confuse their sensors. As the battle raged, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The Zorax ship moved with a grace that belied its size, its weapons tearing through the Void Eater fleet. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, his voice strained, "our shields are failing. We can't take much more of this." Chen gritted her teeth. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but she wasn't ready to give up. "Xanthor," she called, "we need to end this now. Do you have any ideas?" The alien's skin pulsed with rapid flashes of red and white. "There may be a way," it said, "but it is risky. We could use our drive to create a localized implosion, collapsing part of the nebula. It would destroy the Void Eater fleet, but we would need to be very precise to avoid being caught in it ourselves." Chen nodded. It was a desperate plan, but they were out of options. "Tell us what you need us to do." For the next few minutes, the Horizon and the Zorax ship moved in perfect sync. They positioned themselves at the edge of the nebula, drawing the Void Eater fleet after them. At the last moment, both ships fired their engines at full power, using the nebula's gases to create a chain reaction. The result was spectacular. A shockwave rippled through space, followed by a blinding flash of light. When it faded, the Void Eater fleet was gone, leaving only scattered debris behind. As the Horizon's crew cheered, Chen let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity's first contact with an alien species had turned into an unlikely alliance, and a victory against a terrible threat. "Xanthor," Chen said, a smile spreading across her face, "I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." The alien's skin shimmered with warm, golden hues. "Indeed, Captain Chen. Our peoples have much to learn from each other, and together, we may yet save the galaxy from the Void Eaters." As the Horizon and the Zorax ship set course for Earth, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. The universe had just gotten a lot bigger and a lot more interesting. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger world, and she had a feeling their adventures were only just beginning. The gleaming spires of New Geneva stretched towards the sky, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. But today, the city's attention was focused on a single building, the newly constructed Interspecies Cooperation Center. Inside, representatives from Earth and the Zorax were gathered for a historic summit. Admiral Jenna Harper stood at the window, her weathered face reflected in the glass. 20 years had passed since the Battle of Cygnus Nebula, and the alliance forged in that crucible of fire had grown stronger with each passing year. But today's meeting would test that alliance like never before. "Admiral," a voice called from behind her. "They're ready for you." Harper turned to see her aide, Lieutenant Kai Pertol. The young officer's augmented eyes glowed faintly, a reminder of how much humanity had changed since first contact. With access to Zorax technology, cybernetic enhancements had become commonplace. "Thank you, Kai," Harper said, straightening her uniform. "Let's not keep our allies waiting." As they entered the conference room, Harper's gaze was immediately drawn to the Zorax delegation. Unlike the shimmering, color-changing skin of Danthor, these Zorax had adapted a more solid appearance to put their human counterparts at ease. Their leader, Zalver, stood as Harper approached. "Admiral Harper," Zalver said, its voice a melodious hum. "It is good to see you again." Harper nodded, taking her seat at the circular table. "And you, Ambassador. I only wish it were under better circumstances." The room fell silent as Harper activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy sprang to life, with vast swaths marked in an ominous red. "The Void Eaters have increased their attacks exponentially over the past 6 months," Harper began, her voice grim. "We've lost contact with 3 human colonies and 5 Zorax outposts. Our analysts believe they're building up to something big." Zolver's skin rippled with dark blues and purples, a sign of deep concern, Harper had learned. "Our seers have sensed a growing darkness," the ambassador said. "They believe the Void Eaters are marshalling their forces for a major offensive." A murmur ran through the room. Harper raised a hand for silence. "Which is why we've called this summit. Our current strategies aren't working. We need something new, something the enemy won't expect." For the next hour, ideas were proposed and debated. Some suggested a preemptive strike on suspected Void Eater strongholds. Others advocated for a purely defensive approach, fortifying key systems and abandoning outlying colonies. But none of the proposals seemed to address the core of the problem. As the discussion began to circle back on itself, a new voice spoke up. "What if we understand them?" All eyes turned to Dr. Amelia Chen, the daughter of the legendary Captain Sarah Chen. Unlike her mother, Amelia had chosen to fight this war with her mind rather than starships. She was Earth's leading xenobiologist, specializing in Void Eater physiology. "Explain, Doctor," Harper said, leaning forward with interest. Amelia stood, her hands trembling slightly as she took control of the holographic display. "We've been treating the Void Eaters as mindless destroyers," she said. "But my research suggests they're far more complex than that." The display changed, showing a detailed scan of a Void Eater ship. "Their vessels aren't just machines," Amelia continued. "They're alive. And not just alive, they're sentient." A sharp silence fell over the room. It was Zolver who finally spoke. "Are you suggesting we try to communicate with these abominations?" Amelia shook her head. "Not exactly. But if we can understand how they think, how they perceive the universe, we might be able to predict their actions, maybe even find a way to stop them without further bloodshed." Harper frowned. "It's an interesting theory, Doctor. But how do you propose we study a living Void Eater ship? They self-destruct rather than be captured." A sleek smile crossed Amelia's face. "That's where things get interesting. I've developed a way to keep a small section of their biomechanical tissue alive in isolation. If we could obtain a larger sample—" "Out of the question," one of the human admirals interrupted. "The risk is too great." But Harper held up a hand, her mind racing. "No, wait. This could be exactly the kind of unexpected move we need." She turned to Zalver. "Ambassador, what do you think?" The Zorax was silent for a long moment, its skin cycling through a range of colors. Finally, it spoke. "It is dangerous, perhaps foolishly so, but we have tried conventional warfare for millennia without success. Perhaps it is time for a new approach." Over the next few hours, a daring plan took shape. A joint human-Zorax task force would be assembled, combining the best of both species' technology. Their mission: to capture a piece of a living Void Eater ship. As the meeting drew to a close, Harper felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were about to embark on the most dangerous mission in the history of either species, but if they succeeded, it could change the course of the war. "There's one more thing," Amelia said as the others began to file out. "The task force will need a leader. Someone who understands both human and Zorax tactics. Someone who can think outside the box." Harper nodded, already having come to the same conclusion. "I know just the person." 3 days later, Harper stood in the hangar bay of the newly christened HS Prometheus, the most advanced ship ever built by human hands. Before her stood the assembled task force, a mix of humans and Zorax, each chosen for their unique skills and experience. At the front of the group stood Commander Jake Martinez, his cybernetic arm gleaming under the bright lights. He had been one of the few survivors when the Void Eaters destroyed the Neptune colony, and had since dedicated his life to fighting them. "Commander Martinez," Harper said, her voice echoing through the hangar. "Are you prepared for this mission?" Martinez saluted sharply. "Yes, Admiral. My team is ready." Harper nodded, then turned to address the entire task force. "What you're about to attempt has never been done before. It's dangerous, possibly suicidal. But if you succeed, you may save not just our 2 species, but countless others across the galaxy." She paused, looking each member of the team in the eye. "You carry with you the hopes of 2 civilizations. But more than that, you carry the legacy of every sentient being that has ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of a better future. Go forth with courage, with determination, and with the knowledge that history will remember your names." As the task force boarded the Prometheus, Harper felt a surge of pride. This was humanity at its best, facing the unknown with bravery and ingenuity, reaching out to alien allies in a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. The ship's engines flared to life, a brilliant blue against the blackness of space. As the Prometheus lifted off, Harper whispered a quiet prayer to whatever forces might be listening in the vast cosmos. "Good hunting," she said, "and Godspeed." The Prometheus streaked away from Earth, quickly disappearing from view. But its mission had only just begun. Somewhere out there, in the cold depths of space, the Void Eaters were waiting. And for the first time since this war began, humanity and the Zorax had a plan to stop them. As Harper turned to leave the hangar, she caught sight of a small object floating near the ceiling, a butterfly, its delicate wings shimmering with an otherworldly light. It was a Zorax luck charm, she realized, left behind by one of their allies. In that moment, Harper felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, they would face this threat, and together, they would prevail. The butterfly fluttered away, disappearing into the shadows of the hangar. And with it went the last doubts from Harper's mind. The alliance would hold, and the Void Eaters would fall. The Prometheus hung in space, a dark silhouette against the swirling gases of the Horsehead Nebula. On the bridge, Commander Jake Martinez stood rigidly, his cybernetic eye whirring softly as it scanned the redouts flooding his visual cortex. "Status report," he barked, his organic eye fixed on the main view screen. Lieutenant Zara Okoye, the ship's sensor officer, looked up from her console. "No sign of Void Eater activity, Commander. But there's something else. Something I've never seen before." Martinez turned, intrigued. "Explain." Okoye's fingers danced across her haptic interface, printing up a 3D hologram in the center of the bridge. It showed a strange, shimmering object that seemed to fade in and out of existence. "It's some kind of spatial anomaly," Okoye said, her brow furrowed. "But it's not natural. The energy readings suggest it's artificial." Before Martinez could respond, a new voice chimed in. "Fascinating. It appears to be a quantum entanglement node." The voice belonged to Selfo, the Zorax science officer. Unlike most of his kind, Zelfo had chosen to maintain a fluid, color-changing form. Right now, his skin was rippling with patterns of deep blue and gold, a sign of intense curiosity Martinez had learned. "A what?" Martinez asked, moving closer to examine the hologram. Zelfo's tendrils waved excitedly. "A device capable of instantaneous communication across vast distances. We theorized their existence, but never managed to create one." Martinez frowned. Could it be Void Eater tech? "Unlikely," Zelfo replied. "This level of quantum manipulation is beyond even their capabilities. This is something else entirely." For a moment, the bridge was silent as the implications sank in. They had come seeking a way to understand the Void Eaters, but instead, they might have stumbled upon something far more significant. "Can we interact with it?" Martinez asked. Zelfo's skin pulsed with vibrant greens. "Potentially, but it would be extremely dangerous. One miscalculation, and we could be torn apart at the quantum level." Martinez nodded grimly. This was exactly the kind of impossible situation they had been trained for. "Prep a shuttle," he ordered. "I'll lead the away team myself." An hour later, Martinez found himself floating in space, tethered to a specially modified shuttle. Beside him floated Dr. Amelia Chen, her exosuit's built-in sensors already gathering data on the anomaly. "This is incredible." Amelia's voice crackled over the comm. "The quantum fluctuations are like nothing I've ever seen. It's as if it exists in multiple realities simultaneously." Martinez grunted, focusing on maneuvering them closer to the shimmering node. As they approached, he felt a strange tingling sensation, as if every atom in his body was vibrating in sympathy with the anomaly. "Careful," Zelfo's voice warned from the shuttle. "You're entering the quantum field now. Any closer and you risk molecular destabilization." Suddenly, the node pulsed with blinding light. Martinez felt a wrenching sensation, as if he was being pulled in every direction at once. He heard Amelia cry out, and then silence. When Martinez opened his eyes, he found himself standing on solid ground. But it wasn't the shuttle, or the Prometheus, or any place he recognized. He was in a vast, circular chamber, its walls covered in pulsing, organic-looking technology. "Commander." Amelia's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing there, looking as bewildered as he felt. "Where are we?" Before Martinez could answer, a new voice spoke, not in sound, but directly in their minds. "Welcome, travelers. We have been expecting you." A figure materialized before them, or rather, multiple figures that seemed to blur and overlap, as if occupying the same space in different realities. It was vaguely humanoid, but with too many limbs, too many eyes, all shifting and changing from moment to moment. What are you?" Martinez managed to ask, fighting down a wave of nausea at the being's impossible geometry. The figure's many mouths smiled in unison. "We are the architects. We are the ones who came before, who seeded the galaxy with life. And now, at long last, our children have found their way home." Amelia gasped. "You're saying you created everything? Us, the Zorax, even the Void Eaters?" The architect nodded, its form rippling. "All are our creation, but the Void Eaters, they were a mistake. A failed experiment in self-evolving biomechanical life. We thought them destroyed, but they survived, hidden in the dark spaces between galaxies." Martinez's mind reeled. This changed everything they thought they knew about the war, about their very existence. "Why haven't you stopped them?" he demanded. "If you're so powerful, why let them destroy worlds?" The architect's form flickered with what might have been sadness. "We cannot directly intervene. The laws of creation forbid it. But we can guide, can provide tools to those who prove worthy." It gestured, and a small object appeared, floating between them. It looked like a crystal, but it pulsed with an inner light that hurt Martinez's eyes to look at directly. "This is the Nexus key," the architect explained. "With it you can access the quantum network that spans the galaxy. You can communicate instantly across vast distances, predict the Void Eater's movements, even manipulate space-time itself. Amelia reached out tentatively, then pulled her hand back. Why give this to us? Why now? The architect's form began to fade. Because you have proven yourselves, humans and Zorax, working together despite your differences. This is what we hoped for when we created you. Now, use our gift wisely. The fate of the galaxy rests in your hands. With that, the chamber dissolved around them. Martinez felt another wrenching sensation, and suddenly they were back in space, floating next to the shuttle. Commander, Dr. Chen, are you all right? Selfor's panicked voice came over the comm. You disappeared for nearly an hour. Martinez looked at Amelia, saw the same mix of awe and determination in her eyes that he felt. In her hand, she clutched the Nexus key, its glow visible even through her suit's glove. We're fine, Selfor, Martinez replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Better than fine. We've just changed the course of the war. As they made their way back to the shuttle, Martinez's thoughts raced. They had come seeking a way to understand the Void Eaters, and instead had found the key to saving the galaxy. But with this newfound power came immense responsibility. How would they use it? How would it change the balance of power between humans and Zorax? And somewhere out in the darkness, the Void Eaters were still coming. But now, for the first time, Martinez felt they had a real chance of stopping them. As the shuttle docked with the Prometheus, Martinez made a decision. They wouldn't return to Earth or the Zorax homeworld. Not yet. First, they would test the Nexus key, learn its capabilities, and then they would take the fight to the Void Eaters. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands, and Jake Martinez intended to make sure they didn't let it slip through their fingers. The Prometheus hurtled through subspace, its quantum drive humming with power derived from the Nexus key. On the bridge, Commander Martinez stood before a holographic display that showed the real-time movements of Void Eater fleets across the galaxy. It's working better than we could have hoped, Dr. Amelia Chen said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. We can predict their attacks hours before they happen. Martinez nodded, but his expression remained grim. And yet, we're still always one step behind. We save one world, they destroy another. We need to end this war, not just fight it better. Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. Lieutenant Okoi's hands flew across her console. Commander, we're detecting a massive quantum surge. Before anyone could react, reality itself seemed to tear open. A swirling vortex of energy appeared in the center of the bridge, and from it stepped Commander Jake Martinez. But this Martinez was different. His hair was streaked with gray, his face lined with age and marked by a jagged scar. His cybernetic arm had been replaced by a more advanced model that seemed to shift and reconfigure itself constantly. The crew stared in stunned silence as the two Martinezes faced each other. Who are you? The younger Martinez demanded, his hand moving to his weapon. The older Martinez raised his hands in a placating gesture. I'm you, Jake, from 30 years in the future, and I've come back to stop us from making the biggest mistake of our lives. For the next hour, the future Martinez explained his presence. In his timeline, they had used the Nexus key to its full potential, manipulating space-time to win battle after battle against the Void Eaters. But their actions had unforeseen consequences. The quantum manipulations destabilized the fabric of reality. Future Martinez explained, his voice heavy with regret. Entire solar systems began to phase out of existence. In our zeal to save the galaxy, we nearly destroyed it. Dr. Chen, who had been listening intently, spoke up. But surely the architects would have warned us about this possibility. Future Martinez's laugh was bitter. The architects, they're not what we thought they were. They're not benevolent creators, they're scientists, and we're their experiment. He went on to explain that the architects were extra-dimensional beings, studying the development of life and intelligence across multiple realities. The Void Eaters weren't a mistake, but a deliberate introduction to test how different species would react to a common threat. And the nexus key? Younger Martinez asked, dreading the answer. A way to accelerate the experiment, his future self replied. To see how quickly we'd advance our technology and how we'd use that power. The implications were staggering. Everything they thought they knew, everything they had been fighting for, was based on a lie. So what do we do? Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Future Martinez's cybernetic eye glowed as he activated a holographic display of his own. It showed a complex series of quantum equations and star charts. We enact the paradox protocol, he said. We use the nexus key one last time, not to fight the Void Eaters, but to remove the architect's influence from our reality altogether. The younger Martinez frowned. But wouldn't that erase you? Erase this future from existence? His older self nodded solemnly. Yes, and it might erase the Zorax, the Void Eaters, maybe even humanity itself. But it will give our reality a chance to develop on its own terms, free from manipulation. The bridge fell silent as the crew grappled with this revelation. It was Selthor who finally broke the silence, his skin pulsing with deep purples and golds. If we do this, the Zorax scientist said, we would be defying the very beings who created us. We would be choosing an uncertain future over a manipulated existence. Future Martinez nodded. Exactly. It's the ultimate assertion of free will. We'd be saying that we, not some extra-dimensional beings, are the masters of our own destiny. For the next several hours, heated debates raged across the ship. Some crew members were in favor of the plan, seeing it as their only chance at true freedom. Others argued that the risk was too great, that erasing their entire history was too high a price to pay. As the arguments continued, younger Martinez found himself in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He looked at his cybernetic arm, remembering the battle where he'd lost the original. How much of that had been orchestrated by the architects? How much of his life had been his own? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Amelia. I think we should do it, she said without preamble. I've analyzed the quantum equations. It's risky, but it's possible. We could reset our reality, give everyone a clean slate. Martinez nodded slowly. But at what cost? We'd be gambling with the existence of every living being in our galaxy. Amelia's eyes blazed with determination. Maybe. But we'd also be giving them a chance at a truly free existence. Isn't that worth fighting for? As Martinez pondered her words, another alarm blared through the ship. They rushed to the bridge to find chaos. A massive Void Eater fleet had appeared, larger than any they'd ever encountered. They know, Future Martinez said grimly. The architects have realized what we're planning. They're sending everything they have to stop us. Younger Martinez looked at the tactical display, then at his future self, then at his crew. In that moment, he made his decision. Prepare for battle, he ordered, his voice ringing with authority. But not against the Void Eaters. Selthor, work with Dr. Chen to modify the Nexus key. We're enacting the paradox protocol. As the crew sprang into action, Martinez felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. They were about to risk everything, to defy the very beings who had created them. But in doing so, they were asserting their right to choose their own path. The Void Eater fleet drew closer, weapons charging. But aboard the Prometheus, humans and Zorax worked together with single-minded purpose. They weren't just fighting for survival now, but for the very concept of free will. As the first Void Eater beams lanced out towards them, Martinez gave the order. Activate the paradox protocol. Now. The Nexus key pulsed with blinding light. Reality itself seemed to waver and distort, and in that moment, as past, present, and future collided, the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The Prometheus, the Void Eaters, the Zorax homeworld, and Earth itself began to fade from existence. But in their place, the potential for a new, unwritten future began to take shape. In his final moments of awareness, Martinez smiled. Whatever came next, it would be their choice, their future, their destiny. And then everything went white.